Wait for this thing to show us live. I think we are live. All right. Ooh, here we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. Lori Swanson here, CEO of Inspire Tech, founder of Career Alchemy Academy, where women gather every week to get coaching and to talk strategically about their careers, whether they're in a career pivot or repositioning of some in some way, shape, or form inside the organizations or out. If they're on a job search, and we've been just having some amazing discussions about the everything from project management to um, team. Lots of layoffs are going on, and because I work primarily with mid to senior level women in technology, they're having to do some of the laying off or have been laid off themselves. And it's hard on both sides, right? To be the one who's losing their role or to be the one that has to deliver the news, especially when we're in a market like we are right now, that's, harder for job seekers. And these things change, so it will change. And I always say, even in what I call a job seeker down market, there are still opportunities out there for you. So get your strategy, get your plan, get your support, and you will find something that works for you. And to that point, we are going to be, and you can. We'll have it. I've got to make a note of that right now. We'll have it under our resources page on our website, and if you could follow the QR code to Career Alchemy Academy, and then you go to our, just, click on the Inspire Tech logo, it'll take you to our homepage. And in the resources section, we'll have a list. We'll list this upcoming webinar. It's May 8th. And I will be moderating a panel with two very powerful women and we're going to talk about fractional work, interim work, consulting, contracting, consulting advisory type of work. And because when we're in a market we need to be creative. And sometimes this can be the opportunity to consider a different way to get paid and a different way to deliver your wisdom and expertise that you've built all these years in a different way, that gives you maybe more flexibility that you might be craving right now. But also, of course, it's not the same as working inside corporate. So we're going to talk about all of those things on May 8th, Friday, noon Central. Look for the registration link on our website coming up, hopefully within the next day. We just finished the registration page, so we'll get that up on the website. And if you're already signed up for my blog, then you'll get information on this in the blog, or sign up. So go to the website. At the bottom, there's something called Inspirations in your inbox, and sign up for our newsletter. And then you'll also get information on how to register there. So, or join Career Alchemy Academy, and I will register you, or my team. We will get you registered, and you will just, beyond joining Career Alchemy Academy, you will have to do nothing, and you will be, invited and reminded about the event. So that's just kind of, I guess, something I wanted to announce about about the event, and also talk about something that's, I think is related, what I'm calling, are you being quiet fired? So I have a coaching client, and this was a week ago, literally a week ago. And she said, something is happening at work, different parts of my role, there's not all of it, but, a couple key projects and a couple of responsibilities, and team members have been redistributed across the organization into either another leader or another team. And she said, it just seems strange to me that my work's being redistributed. And I said to myself, I'm like, oh, I wonder if she's being quiet fired. So I just asked, I go, do you think there's a possibility that there might be some quiet firing going on? And you could see her, like, the cock of the head, right? And the thinking. And she said, I think that could be a possibility. And not completely disappointing to her in the sense, or super upsetting, because she had already hired me. We'd already been preparing for her exit because she just knew she was ready for something new, but she really wanted to do it on her own terms, on her own timeline. And because of what she was noticing, that might not be the case. So, where we were taking a little more, I would say, methodical process to how she was, the work she was going to be doing, how she, her resume and LinkedIn profile, her connections, all of those things that we would do. We'd been a little more methodical about it, and now the fire was lit, right? We had to pick up the pace in case quiet firing was what was happening. And here's the thing. I think that that does happen is often there are signs and signals, like she was noticing, right? That a project gets moved somewhere, and some other signs. I'll go into that in a second. But we might be noticing things, but often, you know, we ignore them. We're kind of hoping that it's just this is not a longer term impact to my role here, that my job is being eliminated, but this is just simply a one-off thing that's happening that I don't need to be concerned about, because who really wants to start a job search, right? Especially in today's market, and you know and who wants to think that perhaps they might be laid off, because that can really, that can hurt in a whole bunch of ways, the pocketbook, but also emotionally, mentally, it can send us for a spin. And so, but the truth of the matter is, often there are signs that you're being quiet fired, or that there's shiftings going on in the organization, a buyout or an acquisition or something that's going to impact you, a leadership change. There's often signs and signals going on, and I'm just saying, don't ignore those. And I want to give you 7 signs that perhaps quiet firing, might be happening, things to look out for that can help you so that you aren't completely, surprised by it, thrown for a loop, but there actually is that emotional preparation, the actual outward preparation that can be happening, that you can be doing ahead of time. So the first thing that I want you to, be aware of is, if your work is being distributed to other teams, and your responsibilities are shrinking, that can be a sign of that you're, part of quiet firing. The second one is that you're no longer being invited to meetings that you used to be attending. So all of a sudden you're not on the meeting invite, and you're like, Third is that there are conversations happening around you, but not with you, right? You used to be included in these things, and now decisions are being made without your input or even your knowledge. And so you're hearing about things after the fact. So that's another sign that perhaps, lift your head up a little bit. Number 4 is that your feedback has gone silent, or is suddenly vague. So you used to get very clear direction, clear coaching, critique, talk about what's next, and all of a sudden it's more, I guess I would say, more of the, oh no, everything, that's great, thank you. It's just shorter, it's less specific, and we think, oh, she thinks I'm doing a great job, or he thinks I'm doing a great job. But if there is quiet firing going on, it isn't approval. In fact, it's that there's disengagement, that they're separating because they know they're going to have to be separating you from the organization. Number 5, the other thing to look out for is that your work that you're doing is no longer future focused. So you're not being put on stretch projects. There are no new initiatives that you're involved in. Nothing is tied to what's next. you're being kept kind of in the present, in maintenance, but you don't get the sense that they see you in their future. And that is something to, absolutely a signal to be paying attention to. And then number six is that your access to leadership shrinks. So you used to have regular skip levels, and now, you know, um, you grab time and then the time gets canceled, or not just once, but pretty regularly. Like your one-on-ones were more frequent and now they're less frequent. These are things to be considering. And then finally, number seven is that your role is becoming easier to explain without you, if you know what I mean. Like, processes are getting documented. Again, others are looped in just in case, right? Or the another team member is taking over. Well, I guess that's kind of the others being looped in, like a team member's taking over a piece of something. Nothing is necessarily being said out loud, but these are signs to be watchful of. So if all of these things are happening, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but yes, quiet firing could be occurring. But also, I want to say, don't make assumptions or jump to conclusions if you see one or two things happening. That's just where you get curious and start to ask more questions. I had a client who had regularly been invited to this meeting, and then they weren't invited. And they were talking to me about it. And I said, well, did you ask why, what happened or whatever? And she's like, no. And she sends a quick message, and it was an admin error, simple admin error. They had switched things in the calendar, and she had missed copying her name into the new event. And so just a simple thing, no need to, register with unemployment at this point or anything. It was so sometimes it's just a simple question. And I'm going to give you some tactics too, because we talked about the signs, right? And I also, caution not jumping to conclusions, ask some questions, see what, see, it could just be an oversight, an error. But if you're seeing several at once, then I would take time to stop hoping that it's nothing and start preparing instead. Because if it is nothing, but you've done some preparation, brushed off your resume, updated your LinkedIn profile, that's not such a bad thing, right? That's something that's useful to do on a periodic basis anyways. Um, and so, and then you find out, oh my gosh, yes, we're acquiring a company, and so some of this stuff was happening. So you could be promoted into this new role that they just couldn't talk to you publicly about quite yet, and then you're like, oh, but it still wasn't wasted time, right? So, but just hoping that perhaps what your intuition or some, outward awareness is showing you, and then doing nothing, that's when, if in fact you are quiet fired or, something shifts, that's when I hear the most regret. Like, if only I'd been ready, I knew there was something happening, but I did nothing. And now I'm a little behind the eight ball, or they feel, a person feels like they're a little behind the eight ball because now they have to spend, a week or so getting these, what I call career assets, ready to go, when that could have been done while they were still, working, and they could hit the ground running in this case. And so I like to say, hope is not a strategy. Preparation is. Preparation is. So what do you do if you suspect that maybe you're being quiet fired? So as I said, don't panic, and don't make assumptions. Ask some questions. And so, but the first thing is to really get honest with yourself. Like, don't ignore your intuition. As I said, don't hope it just goes away. Clarity is your advantage. So you want to get clear. Number two is you want to reclaim your narrative, especially if you want to stay in the organization. So and I love this tip a lot. It's similar to just saying, "Hey, I saw I was left off that meeting, and I wasn't sure if, if there was a reason why I'm no longer being included, or if there was just an error." And simple, straightforward, direct. Another thing you can do is in your next one-on-one with your boss, you know, just talk about the elephant in the room. You could say, I noticed that my shift, that there's been a shift in the scope of my work. And I wondered if we could discuss how my role is evolving. So that sort of invites transparency, and it also signals your awareness to your boss. Like, hey, I've seen a couple of little changes, and I just want to talk about my role and how it might be evolving. And how it's evolving. It's a very positive um, assumption that you're making right there, right? And so that's a really good way to confront, I guess I'll use that, head on, this intuitive sort of sensing you're getting that some stuff is shifting, and you want to make sure it's, for your benefit and not something you should be preparing for. The other thing I would talk about is the third tip would be to start external positioning before you need to. So that's the career assets. Go ahead, update the resume, refresh your LinkedIn. There's no right time. It should be like regularly anyways, but I know people don't. So it's one of those, yeah, I should do that, right? But if you're feeling some of that, little bit of, I don't know, anxiousness about what's happening, what you can focus that energy on is the resume and the LinkedIn profile, because, right now is the right time, especially if you're sensing some of that. And related to that is, to your external positioning. So getting your career assets in shape is also your network. So that's what I would say your number 4 tip is reconnecting your network, both internally and externally. Depending on the size of your organization, even if something is shifting for you in one part of the organization, in one division, in one area, there might be another place for you because there's so much, institutional knowledge that you have. There's so much benefits you can bring, but now is the time to start kind of that reclaiming of your narrative a little bit. It's also connected to this reconnecting with people that maybe you worked on a project with them, 3 years ago, but you just haven't had the opportunity to stay in touch. Work hasn't presented it that way internally, but let's go after that, reconnect with them. And then, of course, your external network, past colleagues, you've been refreshing LinkedIn, start doing some connecting out there with people you've worked with in the past. And it's just, I think what it does when you're doing that is there's just something about talking with someone ahead of a job search or while you're in a job search that makes that whole process better, easier, more palatable. And, stuff happens then. You're doing things. So the next tip I want to give is to make sure that so they may be documenting some of your processes, but make sure you're also documenting your metrics and your successes and your wins, and look at your performance appraisals and get those into a document that you have on your personal computer so that you can use those not only for resume and LinkedIn, but also, in your dialogue in interviews, or, both, again, could be inside your organization or externally, but reminding yourself of all of the good work that you've done. So, saving some emails that acknowledge you. Again, this could be a great testimonial on your resume or LinkedIn. Starting to also connected to the external. So that was tip 4, was reconnecting with your network. Also asking for recommendations on LinkedIn. That's part of that connecting to your network. It's also part of your external positioning. It kind of hits them all. And it's also helps to get some proof of, of the good work that you're capable of as you possibly are looking for a new role. And then finally, and most importantly, as I am a career coach with a spirit-centered approach, is this protecting of your energy and your confidence, because this can also be a real confidence hit for some people. No one wants to be laid off, and we often make it about our value and worth, which is um, often very little to do with the final decision that the business was making, you know. And the number one thing I said was get honest with yourself. That was the first tip, like don't ignore the signs. But I would also say if there's some good information about how perhaps you weren't, there were parts of your job that maybe you could have done better, or weren't as capable at, because sometimes we're put into roles, we take on new projects, we take on new work, everything's going along great, and then some tool or some process, or there's something that happens that just doesn't never quite feels like you never quite feel in sync with it. So maybe that's something you're no longer going to be doing in this next role. So that sort of being honest with yourself is also important. And then um, using, like I coach around mindset, making sure you're finding thoughts, because all those are sentences. They're just sentences that you can write. Even though your brain seems to be feeding them, we don't have to believe those. We can choose to rewrite those and edit those. So rewrite some of those sentences so that they are creating a feeling of confidence and belief in yourself. So I think that's really probably, it's number 7 on my list or 6 on my list of tips, but it's probably the most important one that I want to exclamation point more than once, is that it's not a reflection of your value or worth. It's not about inadequacy, but we can look at this as an opportunity for something new and exciting coming for you, as good or better than it was. And I'm not saying it's not going to be challenging at points, and I'm not saying you're not going to second guess yourself or wonder perhaps you could have done some things differently, and maybe you could have, but we can't go back in time, right? We can only change the past by changing how we're thinking about it and how we're reacting to it. So really, really protect your energy, protect your confidence, choose thoughts that have you feeling and believing in yourself, feeling good and believing in yourself, because that's going to serve you so much more at any point if you are actually quiet fired. So quiet firing doesn't come like with a meeting invite, it's called quiet for a reason, right? So pay attention to signs, pay attention to those signals, don't ignore your intuition. Follow the tips, that I mentioned, reconnecting with your network, brushing off your career assets, being direct and inviting transparency about the change in scope and what's happening. And really reminding yourself of the fact that you have much to offer. And though it may no longer be necessary where you're at, that there is a place for you, there is a job for you. I know this. I didn't recruit for 25 years, and not see over and over and over again unemployed becoming employed, underemployed getting back in a role that is more properly placing them based on their expertise and skill. And even in the worst of markets, hiring is still happening. So if you're feeling some of those signs that maybe something is shifting at your current role, don't let it be a quiet firing on your side. Like literally, let it fire you up instead. So that's what I have to say today is let quiet firing fire you up to take action, to let preparation be your strategy, and to remember that what's coming for you is going to be at least or good or better. And that is so true. Inside Career Alchemy Academy right now, our monthly touchstone is flow. So I want to say don't resist the quiet firing, but step into that current, lean into it, allow it to carry you forward without resistance, and just watch this landscape, the horizon as you get closer, open up into something even more magical. Because I believe that's what happens when something disrupts us, is that it calls us to something even that we need to be moving to next. So that's that for today. Peace to everybody. And you know how to find me. So find me, DM me on LinkedIn, send me a message on all the channels, get on the newsletter. You can reply back to that newsletter, and I always see it. My team sends it to me, or I look at them directly. So let's talk, become part of the community, become an alchemist yourself, so that you're stirring the pot with the fire that's firing you up, and transforming into your career and your life into something that just lights you up. So continuing to use that analogy. I'll talk to you soon. Here next week, I'm on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. I'm a day earlier due to an event that I'm going to. But again, if you're on the newsletter, you will know that. Talk to you soon.